Our spring forecast sponsored by Home Hardware. We're going to take a little bit of a national outlook here, Tyler, but we're going to sort of dive a little bit deeper than just where's going to be warm and cold, where's going to be wet and dry, because we do see a lot of normal on the maps this year, especially temperature-wise. So I guess, you know, some springs have to be normal, and maybe let's talk about what a normal spring is across the country.
And yeah, Matt, a normal spring is a roller coaster still.
Yeah.
We have our ups and downs. Of course, our temperatures are clashing even more through the season that is spring because we're getting that increased solar energy pushing north from the States. But we have residual Arctic air to work with all across the Northern Territory. So that promises to bring a lot of ups and downs and also active storm tracks at times.
Yeah. So I'm glad you sort of mentioned that it's changeable, like across the country. And spring sort of hits different in every region. In Ontario, it means wild temperature fluctuations. In Alberta, it means continued snowfall. So I guess maybe a reminder to people that this is a real season of transition, and we need to practice a little bit of patience.
2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.
We'll get surges of temperatures to 20 degrees across southern Ontario, but then sharp cold fronts will push through the region. And of course, March is portions of the prairie's snowiest month. The temperature's warm and those air masses are still clashing. That means big snows can still linger through March and even into early April.
Yeah, so this is sort of going to be a classic Canadian spring. In a year where we are trying to really lean into Canadiana, the weather is delivering that as well in a very stereotypical spring.
Well, yeah, and we're lacking a big pattern driver in the atmosphere, Matt. So that's what is coming down to this near normal spring. We don't really have an extreme warmth or an extreme cold signal. So near normal perception, we have to be extra patient through this spring with these temperatures. For Canadians to really think we have a warm spring, you have to almost hit a top 10 warmest spring.
Yeah.
It is highly unlikely we are looking at one of those springs ahead.
Yeah, so are you able to sort of dive into a little bit of like what are sort of normal temperatures? And we are also talking about a 3-month period, so it can be difficult to sort of average out what that means. But what can you tell us about what those temperatures are?
Well, if you just look at southern Ontario, for example, say the GTA, a normal March temperature is about 5, but we can see temperatures from -5 to 20, so we get extreme variability. By the time we hit May 1st, our average temperatures push to 16 degrees, and the end of May, we're pushing close to 20 across portions of Canada. So it is really we really increase that temperature by the time we hit to late spring, but we are forecasting a pretty sizable hiccup by the time we head late March, early April, especially across central and eastern Canada. Some residual cold air expected to play ball across Ontario. Quebec.
Yeah, so we call those tastes of winter, and that's certainly going to be a theme really in areas across the country. We've talked about temperatures. Let's talk a little bit about precipitation, and you mentioned it already. March is Alberta's snowiest month, so maybe with a bit of a focus on Western Canada, there is continued snowfall still to come. Sort of a good way to remember this is precipitation is plentiful in the spring, if we want to use alliteration.
And we need a comeback, a snowpack deficit is significant across British Columbia and Alberta. So we need that for wildfire suppression and runoff, spring melt. That's critical. So the next 4 weeks across British Columbia and Alberta, typically the snowpack peaks, Matt, early to mid-April. So these next 4 weeks, absolutely critical. And as we progress through the spring, there are some drought concerns bubbling, especially along the international border across the prairie. So we're going to watch that moisture as we push through spring.
Can we dive into that a little bit more? Are there, you mentioned that one area, are there other areas across the country that we're looking at for drought, or how concerned are we about the drought potential into the spring?
The drought is all in the west, but if we want to flip that on flooding concerns, of course we had about 5 meters of snow through Haliburton, Cottage Country. It's a bit of a ticking time bomb, especially as we push up Quebec and also portions of New Brunswick. We're concerned about the spring flood season, not so much in Western Canada. I'm thinking the St. John River. Once the ice begins to break up later through March into April, we have a sizable snowpack that has to melt.
All right, what's the link between, you mentioned it, the link between the precipitation that we've had or are expecting through early spring and the wildfire season, which has technically already begun?
Yeah, for sure. So we need to watch, see where those storm tracks really push that moisture into Alberta. Of course, the wildfire season begins early in the prairies. Alberta sees that kick in March. We've had historic wildfires in early May. So these next 6 weeks, when that moisture, if it doesn't arrive in Alberta, that is a red flag for the wildfire season. But signs right now, hopefully we're not looking at an unprecedented wildfire season. We can continue to get some of that active Pacific moisture across the Rockies.
So in terms of, going outside and enjoying early spring, which some people might like to do, we just need to remember that the precipitation at this time of the year is so vital. We can talk about April showers and what those bring, but it's an important balance that we're trying to strike in a year-long sort of thing. The warm and dry conditions, obviously we'll want those into summer as well, so it's really important to sort of enjoy and savor the precipitation during the spring.
You got it, Matt. It's a huge balancing act. We have record snow in the east. Hopefully we can get some more snow through the Rocky Mountains.
All right, let's finish up by talking about pattern drivers. And you mentioned that there's no real dominant pattern driver this year, but we are seeing signs that we are slowly sliding from that La Nina to an Enso neutral. What kind of impact is that going to have on our weather across the country this season?
And typically in a shoulder season, the Enso patterns become less important. So when it's neutral, it's even a little bit further less important. So when we look towards the northern latitudes, Matt, a sudden stratospheric warming event can dislodge the polar vortex. So that's our final cold parting shot. So we're watching the significant warmth in the Arctic, blocking high pressure systems as well. There's a tendency for that to bring down some really late winter cold, especially over the next 4 to 6 weeks into April. So that will be an amazing driver we have to keep an eye on. But in terms of La Nina and El Nina, it is taking the back seat, that's for sure, the spring forecast.
Yeah, so as we mentioned, a classic Canadian spring. Some springs have to be normal. This is going to be one. Remember to practice your patience as we come out of what was, especially in Ontario, a really late winter emphasis on the cold and the snow. So as much as people might not like to hear it, Tyler, spring is a changeable season. We need to be patient, and those warmer temperatures will come eventually.
They will come. They'll come by May.
All right, our spring forecast continues here on the Weather Network.